I'm Barbara Black, and we're here at the Blackfish Gallery. It's May 2015, and we're looking at my exhibition of canvases and works on paper. The painting here is entitled Night, and is the first of the 3 larger canvases in this show that was completed. And I used to say that I didn't do landscapes, but I have always in my work had a number of abstract references to landscape, and that's true in this one. I think of that as, maybe a twilight sky. And it's also, I think of these as color field paintings, which the word field in itself has a nature reference. So nature has been an element in my work for quite a while. Here is one of the figurative elements in the painting. I think of it as more or less kind of an aerial view with lines of latitude and longitude, like longitude and latitude, just a little glimpse of an aerial view or a map that is one of the few images that's in the large color field. This large color field painting is called Noon, another reference to the time of day, and it has a lot of, unlike night, it has a totally different color reference and is quite vivid in its colors. We just see little bits of landscape elements suggested there, possibly a little bit of water and grass, but mostly it's pretty abstract and attempting to capture a mood and a time of day and the feeling that elicits in people. This painting is entitled Evening, and it is the 3rd one in the series. I haven't done morning and afternoon yet, but they will be in the future. And it has actually more imagery, recognizable imagery in a sense, than the other 2. It still has the large color field, which I think of kind of evoking a color atmosphere, a time of day atmosphere, and then some implications of landscape up above, possibly a horizon, possibly not, and a little more distinct than usual references with the mountains here suggested down at the bottom. The forms could be read as totally abstract, but are suggesting nature forms. There's a little more activity within the color field itself, with these various brush strokes and shifts in color and value in this one, the little whispers of kind of a fiery red appearing in it. One thing I want to point out that is true of all 3 canvases that we've just looked at is the fact that I often put in a rectangular divisions, almost like creating frames for the pictures, for the paintings, and that will be evident when we look at the other works, the small works on paper that make up the balance of the show, that approach to composition continues. This is a small work. It's also in acrylic, as the larger canvases are, but treated more as watercolor with washes and things. The image size is rather small. It's 10 by 13, and It's using very, very thin washes on an impervious kind of paper. And this can be done on gessoed board or gessoed paper, like stretched watercolor paper, or I use a paper called Yupo. And the process is that I use these maybe 3 colors of very thin washes, lots of water and very little pigment, and apply those over the surface of the paper. And then it's kind of like in the night. It takes a long time to dry there. And in the night, the pigments do some more moving around, so that when I come to the studio the next morning, I receive some surprises that the pigments and the water have done their thing to make the composition when I wasn't there. So it's always exciting to come in and see what the nature of the water and the pigment, different color pigments have done. Then my process is to go in and, rather similar to the large acrylics on canvas, you can see I often apply a rectangular form that kind of grounds and creates a contrast with the very organic flowing forms. I think of a lot of this as representing water as well as created by water. And then I brush on thick paint, sometimes straight from the tube, to create another kind of contrast between the transparency and the very opaque paint. So I'm kind of playing the two against each other and trusting that they will work together to create a full composition. As you can see, these paintings kind of continue the landscape references in a very abstracted way, and while introducing the geometry as a contrast, as mentioned, for me there seems to be a lot of water, associations with bodies of, or references to water and nature in some way or another. One of the things that intrigues me about this particular painting is the kind of series of rings that edge around the dark shape. It's such an unexpected movement that occurred on its own out of my sight when the pigments in the water went through the process of evaporation. I find it very intriguing. This series was begun last summer, and when I first saw them, they seemed rather other to me. they seemed very different than what I usually do, and so they were a bit puzzling to me. I struggled with titles for them for quite a while, and then the idea of terra incognita, the Latin for unknown land, seemed very appropriate to me, so I was happy to find a title that reflected my feelings about these little abstract landscapes that had appeared as a collaboration between me, the water, and the pigments of the acrylic paint. These two paintings are the next to the last in the series of painting little colorful paintings we've been talking about. One of the things I had been telling myself for several exhibitions over the last few years that would be that I would do works without black in them. And so these continue that desire to use color only without using black as a color. They were made from right next to each other, so they actually share some of the same imagery from frame to frame. And unlike the others we just looked at, when I looked at them, I didn't feel they needed that. I felt that the water and the pigments and my original application had arrived at suggested landscape and abstract imagery that was totally satisfying to me, and I didn't add any of the more opaque brushed on paint. So they're a little different than any other paintings in my show in that respect. This is the last painting in that series that we've just been looking at of small 13 by 10 inch paintings. And I departed from my idea of having, well, not exactly, it's not quite black, it's rather a dark navy blue, but I did go into contrast of value. And also this one is the first one in which collage appears. And the rose is collaged on, and you see the kind of rectangular inner shape that I'm prone to do. The painting we're looking at now begins a different series, and done at a little different time, a little later in time, and the watery washes are only in the parts that we see, and that's a plan device. And then layers of thicker acrylic occur around it, and also I'm breaking my vow about black, because there is black behind the pyramidal shape there. So it varies. It's a little different size too, a little bit larger than the others as well. This painting continues with the title of Terra Incognita. I believe it's Terra Incognita 9. And as you can see, I'm indulging my love of black as a color in this one. And we see less of the collaboration with the water and the pigment. It's covered by more opaque paint, especially in the areas under the black and the pink. This is the last painting in the series of works on paper for this exhibition, and it involves collage. Actually, several layers of collage have been brought together for this one. I like the idea that the collaboration with the pigments and the water is sort of imposed amidst my more usual kind of brushwork, and the organic versus the geometric rectangular interested me a lot. So I've enjoyed putting those together.